It's another Human First AI marketing podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague at Avenue 9. I have two special guests this week, Tim Brewer and Damian Bramanis from Functionally. They are co-founders at Functionally. Tim is the investor, advisor, the big brain forward thinker there. And not to say yours isn't big, Damian, but he's our CMO, our technical guy, and the one that we're going to ask the hard questions of. We're going to let Tim make it up as we go along. Is that fair?
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Works good.
All right, perfect. Then we'll start with you, Tim, because I think when we think about org design, this isn't something I've talked about on the podcast before, but a lot of people are concerned about, will AI take their jobs? What, are we going to have robot workforces or even AI agents doing the majority of tasks? And what happens to people in our organization as we do that? And most importantly, I think I'm just giving you three questions to start off. I'm known for really complicated questions, so you feel free to pick whichever one you want to answer as we go through here. I think the question really becomes, like, how do we make that jump? It's going to be really messy in the next few years as people sort out their org design. Is that fair?
Yeah. It's definitely something we think about a lot. We discuss a lot internally. We talk to a lot of other people. And so maybe if I unpack it in a bit of a story, hundreds of years ago, the world went through another pretty big shift, which is when we all used to work on farms and trade our goods. All of a sudden, someone's like, oh, we could probably make widgets in a factory rather than making them in a blacksmith's place. And over a 70-year period, the world went through this fairly large revolution, which now is known as the Industrial Revolution. And so internally, when we're looking at that, we think it's probably going to be similarly high impact. Like, it's going to change the way we work. It's going to change where we work. It's going to change how we work. There's going to be retraining required, reschooling required, like lots of very big, fairly fundamental shifts in the way we do what we do. But with a challenge, and that is AI is probably going to have the same or more amount of change in just 7 years. So it's happening at 10x the velocity that we saw in the Industrial Revolution. And so we think about that in a couple of different ways. So we actually have got an internal, a confidential internal paper that Damian wrote for us around how that'll impact org design. And I'm going to let Damian talk to some of the shifts we see happening. But maybe if I just address on the personal front, that is, organizations are full of humans, and org design, which is how you structure an organization, think who reports to who, maybe an org chart, what people do, think job descriptions, role descriptions, and where they do it. Do I do it out in the field? Do I do it in the organization? Am I reporting to two bosses? Does no one know who I report to? We joke quite often about, we're just here to help people fix the gaps, cracks, and overlaps in their organization structure, because every single organization you've ever worked for, that we've ever worked for, everyone that we've ever helped have these gaps, cracks, and overlaps across their organization that mean they don't operate very efficiently. And that's AI is going to exemplify or add to the impact of how fast you need to address and optimize your organization. It's not going to be the panacea of like, oh, org design is just going to be like resolved now. It's actually going to kind of like make some of those gaps, cracks, and overlaps that people experience in their organizations worse. And we could tell lots of jokes. Literally, the way people deal with that at the moment is it's too difficult, so they kind of ignore it and sweep it under the rug. And so you get people running around the organization going, shouldn't we be doing this thing? Or why does Johnny still work on that project that we don't sell or do or anymore? Like, is it like, what, this poor person stuck in the cogs of an organization essentially doing work that's not required. And so you get these kind of terrible situations. We always laugh and joke. So ignore it because it's too difficult. And then on the other side, you call McKinsey, Accenture, Deloitte, and you get $1 million consultant to give you the most expensive PowerPoint presentation you've ever paid money for, to tell you that things need to shuffle around slightly. And they're literally the two ways that most organizations get org design done today. But we think that's the whole way of working, this big monolithic reorg projects every couple of years that no one looks forward to, are not going to be the way of the future. And maybe I'll throw to you, Damian, to talk a little bit about, I know you're spending a lot of time with other engineers and architects in the AI space. Damian's background is a mathematician, so he's pretty deep, and an engineer and a product designer, as well as being our CMO currently. Wearing the CMO role hat today. Damian, what are you thinking in terms of like, what are the big fundamental shifts that organizations are going to experience? And then we can talk about like, what does that mean for the humans?
Yeah, well, I want to touch on something that Mike said, which was, will AI take our jobs? And the way that we think about that is your job isn't just one thing. If you think about last week, there was 100 different things that you did. There's all sorts of different tasks. And to wait to the point where AI can do every single one of those tasks, it's going to be a fair way in the future. But the reality is AI will take your work, and it will take it right now. So if you think of those 100 things, there's already 1, 2, 5, 10, I don't know, there's could be 50 different things that AI can do the work for you. And so what we see is that AI will transform everyone's jobs. And so bit by bit, all of your work is going to start shifting from human to AI. And the level of that change, like we're already seeing huge amounts of people's jobs and work changing as their tasks they do shift from something that they did by themselves or something that they did as a human to shifting that to AI. And so the level of change that we're seeing already is massive, but it's going to be completely unprecedented. The level of amount of work that AI is going to take away from people is completely unprecedented in modern history. So there's that first kind of shift of, no, your job isn't under threat, but oh my gosh, the work that you do, that absolutely is going to be shifting to AI, and rapidly over the next few years. So
then the question, I think, goes technically to what Tim was setting up there for us of blind spots and bottlenecks are what AI is really good at, right? Because we as humans, we just dropped the ball. We never looked at this part of our departments or this specific role, or we, this person is working remotely, so we never see what they're doing. AI can give us a lot, deeper insights into these, and then also these bottlenecks that we may know that some part of our process or our structure is holding us back. Tim mentioned one person reporting to multiple people, or just, I see often in sales, way too many people reporting to one person, and that causing a lot of issues and slowdowns. That's some cool insight that we've never been able to get before. Can you talk about some of the technological solutions to these problems?
Tim, I reckon that
you want me to tackle that?
That's for you. Yeah.
I mean, firstly, I think it's a human problem. But in terms of technical solutions, we think, so AI is very good at grabbing a lot of information and pulling it together. But I don't know if you've ever been in a workshop or working on a project, and there's nothing quite like getting, I love Lego. I don't know if you're like seeing what's going on back here, but there's a bit of Lego behind me. There's something about.
Well, there's only 10,000 in this one behind me.
Oh, so. Right, Lego as well. There is something about moving the pieces around in Lego and being creative with little building bricks of the organization. And we kind of think about organization design the same way. It doesn't have to be as complex or driven by consultants or locked away in a drawer in a PowerPoint that the whole organization doesn't understand. If you break it down the right way, it can be something that people can wrap their minds around and orchestrate in a proactive way. And so what AI can do a great job of pulling all that information together, but I think as humans, we still are the ones who need to orchestrate both our organization and what goes on when AI starts doing work for people. And there's already a good amount of chatter in our community and around what we're doing around like, hey, should AI agents go into org charts? At what point does an AI agent stop becoming a tool and start becoming something can do a role within the organization? I don't think every AI agent is that. What happens when robots are doing roles within the organization? I'd probably like to start with the most simple human thing, and I talk about this when I speak at events. We don't like giving up work. Like as a person, we're like kind of protective, like, and I got this story where me and Damian were interviewing a CTO, and he was like, oh my goodness, I'm barely sleeping at the moment, I've got all this work. And essentially we worked out he was doing 4 completely different roles in his job, and his boss would sit him down like, I need you to give stuff up. And he's like, I don't want to give stuff up. Like, I'm important to this organization. I don't want to do that. And we just ran this really simple exercise, which is like, well, let's consider those different roles like hats that you wear. To Damian talked about, some of the hats that you wear might go and be done by AI. And rather than thinking about, well, I wear all these different hats, my hat is the equivalent of my seat in the organization. And sometimes seats change. But actually, which hat do you want to wear? Because you can't wear them all at once. Like if you just could wear one hat all the time, which hat? He's like, oh, I want to wear that hat. And literally we did nothing else, went away, came back the next day. I'm like, oh, hey, let's kind of re-engage in this conversation. And it's like, oh yeah, I've already delegated those other 3 things. Because he's like, I didn't want to do them. Like I looked at the hats, I'm like, the hat's ugly, it's the wrong color, it's not what I like, I don't like the brand on it. Whatever it is, like he really liked this particular hat. And so he gets to go spend all his time there, which is a completely different way of saying it than like you need to give stuff up, which is him thinking about his world and these different hats or roles that he wears in the organization. And so I think there is an element of this that AI will accelerate and make even harder, but there's lots of very practical ways we can break it down into little Lego pieces or hats that people wear to have a much faster, easier conversation that's more human in the way change happens in our organizations. And I think that's AI is not a panacea. It's actually going to create a reasonable amount of complexity and challenge. But yeah, Damian, do you want to add or extend off those thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to talk about a couple of things there, but what we're seeing is that AI is developing greater capabilities every day. And so to kind of go, what's the best way to apply it, or what's the best technology or the best thing to use, is kind of the wrong mindset to think about things, because if you kind of fix a solution, it's soon going to become out of date and require change. So the question you need to ask yourself is, how can my organization move faster and adapt more quickly? And that's actually more on the human structure than on finding the right technology. And what Tim was talking about there with thinking of the hats you're wearing and the work that you're doing, people like to hold on. We all like to hold on and go, this is stuff that I'm responsible for and I'm accountable for, and it's important to me to do this, and it's part of my identity. Like it's how I find purpose and meaning at work. But when you step back and say, well, of all the things that I do, what are the parts of my job which I love doing? They give me energy. I get up in the morning and yes, that's the first thing I want to get up and work on. And then what are those vampires? What are the things that every time I just think about doing them, it sucks my energy away, and I just don't want to work on that. And so by thinking about your job as a malleable thing that you can craft and go, I want to do more of these things and I want to do less of these things, and to understand that of other people in your organization, it completely changes the way that people think about work, rather than I am this job and I am a content marketer. It's I love doing these things and I don't like doing these things, and I want to find a tool that can do those things for me, take that work away and do more of this sort of work that I really love. And it's that mindset of, okay, I can change this and it can be different today to what it was yesterday. And then tomorrow it can be different again, and that's okay. And it's crafting the right thing for the people in the organization. Completely changes the way people think about work. And so
for leaders,
we see that
I put that on too, like the organization and what you're marketing. So when I do marketing consulting and strategy with people is, if you're Zappos and you're built on customer service, don't replace the customer service agents with AI first. Do the logistics or the back end or other stuff. Like don't change out what is the core of your business either, just like you wouldn't with your job. Is focus really on what's important, and let's take the things that aren't important first. And go ahead, you were gonna add something else, Damian.
So I was just completely agreeing with you there. So absolutely, you want to focus on the things that are important to your organization, like strategically important, and they're the ones that you want to really hold on to.
And I think there's a difference between for me, I like to think about human jobs and robot jobs. So Legos are a great example. I use it all the time, Tim, is if you're building a Lego set, you got instructions for the box and you're building a specific model, that's great. We can have AI and robots put these pieces in this specific order. And if we have to make the same model 300 times or 3 million times, great. That's a great thing for AI. But if you have a whole bucket of pieces and you don't know what you're going to make, and you're trying to make something creative that's never been made before, that's not a great job for AI and automation and robots. That's where we need humans to go out and decide which pieces fit where and what the thing looks like, and it takes shape along the way. That's a creative human task. And I think those are really fun things to think about, that there's just some things humans are really bad at, and there's some things that AI is really bad at. And so as we think about our organization, we got to think about where are the overlaps, where are the unique assets of each, and how do we design this in an intelligent way?
The gaps, cracks, and overlaps. Yeah.
I think that's part of like, how do you lead? My view is a lot of that's just good leadership. And Damian talked before, people find their purpose and their the word escapes me, but
they find meaning.
They find meaning and status in their community because of what they do. And so for a lot of, I get to hang out with a lot of business owners that have exited their business. And we often talk about like, how was it the first 3 months of not being in your role? And they're like, I didn't know what to say. I was like, what do I say? Like, particularly if they're not at retirement age.
What do you do for a living? Nothing anymore.
I surf a little bit. I skateboard a little bit. I respond to my friends' emails, like what, and you just kind of feel empty because you have no placeholder to be placed from my social status. So I think it's going to have some change in social status. Leaders need to be aware of that. So if you're leading a business and you've got 100 people in your business, you really need to think about like the impacts of those social cues, those social statuses changing as role titles change, because people get so attached to that, like Damian said. I'm thinking creatively internally in your organization, how you reward something different to maybe what you've rewarded before. But there is this like existential changes that happen, like Damian said, in an industry where you might wake up as a leader, you're going to find that, hey, my competitor used to do something at like 40% margin and now they can do it at like 90% margin. So they're starting to drop their price. And so there is like an element where you and your team and your organization need to be competitive, not only with AI in general, but others in your industry that are leaning into AI, that are leveraging that to do their things faster and more efficiently than maybe they have before. So I think there's a couple of like interesting drivers that as a leaders we're going to have to manage. If we don't get out in front of that, it will end up managing you from the market in. And so we encourage a lot of people like, hey, this is not the time to sit back and go, oh, we'll just reorg 3 years from now, because from a adoption curve perspective, you will be so far behind others in your industry or your competitors or alternatives investing into AI and a whole new way of doing it. It'd be, like missing the manufacturing. It'd be like being 70 years too late to the to the shift in manufacturing that we saw 200 years ago. So yeah, some kind of interesting concepts.
It's really like shifting from the process of even doing reorg design to like just-in-time manufacturing, where like we're reorging all of the time, like almost every day, week, and month.
Yeah,
because things are changing that fast.
Yeah, I think we always see, and when you look at like what good org design looks like, or what does a mature org design process look like, we think about that in a couple of different ways. But having a regular and informed and proactive way to look at your organization structure and ask, is this aligned to our strategy, is above and way you see the healthiest organizations that are doing that. So it's already been something that people are building, these healthy org design cultures that we observe, as opposed to organizations that are just like the board is forcing them into a change structure through a consultant 3 years too late, 6 years since the last reorg. But we do really think at the rate of change that we're going to see in the next 7 years, there's going to be three pretty profound shifts in the way org design is done, and in around a lot of things, but for us around how people structure and think about their company. The first, maybe if I tackle the first one, Damian, which is we're going to see that happen continuously, and not because people are like, oh, I can't wait, I want to restructure all the time, because no one friggin' wants to do another restructure, because restructures aren't always executed well. But if you're needing to think about having a pipeline of changes that are happening in your organization and them happening quite regularly, you can build a healthy org design culture. And you do need to have a continuous approach to how you're actioning change within your organization. But Damian, there's a couple of other things that you see it as changing as well. Maybe talk to us about some of those that you see being pretty impacted by AI.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll mention on the like continuously changing org design. So I write code. My background is in engineering. I do marketing now, but so last week I wrote more code than any month last year. And I didn't write much of that code. I maybe wrote 10 lines myself, but AI wrote the rest of it. And so I've written massively more code, and in a way that wasn't possible just a few months ago. So the question of continuously changing your org design isn't we'll choose to wait. It's if you don't, someone else will be pumping out far more work than you a few months from now because you haven't adapted. So you're being forced to adapt, or your organization will die as a result of that. So that kind of like first change of continuous change is absolutely there. The second one we talked about, which is your job's going to be transformed because tasks are moving to AI, and we're seeing the pointy end of that wedge now. The first things starting to happen, but the question soon won't be which parts of your job will AI do. The question will be what parts of the job does the human do, because the AI will do more work than the human. And so we've heard talk about artificial general intelligence, or AGI, and the definition I love of that is from OpenAI, the makers of ChatGPT, and they say that it's when AI outperforms humans in most economically viable work, more than 50% of tasks. And so when you think about what that means, it means most of the work on planet Earth will be done by AI, and it will be done far faster. So there'll be like this rapid expansion in the amount of work that happens. And so the last thing is then, well, what is it that the human excels at? Where does the human fit into that picture? And what I think that is the human's the driver. The human's the person with judgment and oversight and still holds accountability. So the buck stops with the person if you're making things right or wrong. And ultimately, it's about taste. You have to develop a really good sense of taste as a human, and then use the AI to do everything else. And what we're seeing AI is being really good at is knowing things cross-functionally, understanding all like very shallow in all sorts of different domains, and being able to pattern recognize across lots of those different things. And so you need to be really tasteful in one domain, and the AI kind of like does lots of things out from there. And so we've talked about continuous change. We've talked about things moving around really fast, so moving roles and responsibilities. And then the third kind of change there is this whole cross-functional, that because you join up with the AI and work in collaboration with AI, it means there's going to be far more cross-functional work happening across organizations.
Yeah, I think that part is fascinating to me. So we could go a couple of different directions here, and we're running out of time. I think I'm gonna come on your podcast too, Tim. So maybe we can
absolutely
continue the conversation over there. But check that out. That's the Org Design podcast, and functionally. And I want to ask how functionally helps here too. So I have 3 questions. We're gonna go super fast. Number one comment I think is, as leaders, when you talk about that speed of work being done, Damian, that you can do a month's worth of work in a day, that's not just a little bit faster. We've been used to being a little bit more efficient. It's what are we as leaders have to figure out, what are our people going to do if 90% of their time is free? That's a big difference. We either change the fundamental definition of work and we don't need you for 40 hours a week, or we have to think of better tasks. If they can do an org design that used to take 3 years to plan out in the 3 to 5 year plan that took 90 days to create as a manager, executive leader, it now takes 3 hours or 3 days to implement. Well, what is that person going to be doing for the next 3 months? That's a really hard question.
So I think that means work is going to be way more fun. So I reflect on when I was a kid and I'd try to build things out of blocks and whatever. That was all right. But then you look at playing Minecraft and the blocks are so much bigger. You can dig, make an entire house, and it is so much faster and so much easier. You feel this far greater sense of accomplishment. You feel like you've kind of got this power up. You're like Mario after he's eaten the mushroom, that you can do so much more. And then I feel like that now when I'm coding, is that I used to have to type every character. Now I hit a button and then it writes it all. I say, no, that's wrong. Change this. I refactor it and whatever. And I feel like at the end of the day, I've accomplished so much more. Believe me, 90% of my time is not free, but it's so much more fun to be productive. And while I don't work in construction, I imagine driving a big digger around and digging massive holes is a lot more fun than what people were doing with a shovel, back a couple of centuries ago. So I think the answer is people are going to be having more fun at work, and they're going to be producing far more. And I actually think it's the most exciting era. If you're a small organization, If you're a dozen people or 50 people or 100 people, all of a sudden you're on this level playing field with the big established companies of the world, and you're able to move mountains compared to what you could have done a couple of years ago. So I actually think it's a really exciting time to be a small challenger organization, and you can just absolutely power up what you can do. I think it's really exciting.
Yeah.
Tim, I want to ask you a little bit about kind of your work as an investor and stuff, because I do kind of see this split that I think the businesses most in trouble are the ones in the mid-sized range. That if you're a large mega corporation like Amazon and Google, they've got billions of dollars, they're building their own models, they're going to be fine. They're going to control so much of the data and power and systems and the city-sized data centers that they're building. I'm not concerned about them so much. The small businesses also, I think it's going to kind of get to a point where there are things that they can't do, and we're always going to want to go to a restaurant or interact with a human for certain things. And I think micro businesses are largely going to be okay. They've kind of already been swallowed up, the ones that could. And, if you're a local barber, we're probably not going to get AI haircuts anytime soon, right?
Well,
but these middle ground, small, medium-sized businesses, I don't need one anyway. Or my haircut's easier to do than Damian's. I think the mid-sized businesses, though, if they don't get flexible, if they don't figure out how to compete with the big boys, might just get swallowed up constantly.
Yeah, we definitely think that it's an extinction level event. It will affect every single industry, and I think the companies that are doing traditional things that can be easily replaced by like you said, task-driven AI, are in real serious trouble from competition and a shift in expectations of their customer. So I think the customer expectation is going to shift wildly. People aren't going to be okay waiting 3 weeks to get a bit of paper in a physical bit of mail you send around the world. They're going to want the speed of email. And we're going to see that expectation shift. And it is strangely, in this iteration of change with AI, it's been driven from ChatGPT, which is a customer-led experience. It's not just like business first, which is what email was. So I think it's going to be kind of forced on organizations from a couple of different directions. And at extinction level, like there will be companies, many brands that you know today, that if they cannot get agile and they cannot rethink their organization collaboratively with their business, are in a huge amount of economic trouble, market trouble. And that's going to lead to a lot of pain and a lot of change, sadly, if they don't kind of lean into that reality. And it's not going to feel supernatural either. People don't like change, and change needs to be led. And so if you're not leading change and trying to ignore that it'll happen, won't happen to us, there'll be a lot of Kodaks, I'd suggest, 10 years from now. And so we just functionally, we just want to be super, super helpful to that. And we think that it's impossible for consultants who are now being displaced by AI to do that job in the way the mid-market needs. And so we just want to be an organization that can stand out for those leaders and be an assist, to power up for them as they think about the building blocks of their organization, who does what, where they do it, how they do it in their business. We talked before about fixing the gaps, cracks, and overlaps that have always existed, but are now just going to exist with a whole heap of agents running around doing stuff that you can't see. And then John, who implemented them, is going to leave, and then what are all those AI agents doing? And we don't want them to do that anymore. Where do they even exist? How do you log in? It's just going to be some really, really interesting stuff go on. So
how specifically does functionally help? What's the problem that you're solving, and how have you found your unique solution in this crazy world?
Yeah. Org design in mid-market companies is very hard. And so there's actually not an easy way to put together an org chart to see who does what and where they do it in your organization, and then to consider different scenarios for the future, or different ways that you could structure people in different positions, people wearing different hats, new people joining the organization, so planning for growth or planning for change. And we help them do that far easier than doing in spreadsheets and PowerPoint slides, and doing that in an AI-powered or an AI-enabled way. So we help a lot. It's about visualization, kind of like we talked about before with what are the building blocks or the Lego blocks of your organization. And for most leaders today, they do not have a tool or a way to do that in a continuous motion, which we see as the future of that industry, moving from consultants to leader-led organizational change and happening on a pretty continuous basis.
Yeah, I find all of that fascinating. I think we're going to see more, for the people that are sports fans, the Moneyball analogy, where we're going to see more insight into like who's your star player and who's really making an impact and who do we not need, and do we need more singles or do we need more home runs in our organization, and where are they come from, where are they coming from, and how do we build these more intelligently and running less on intuition. I heard a great quote today that humans are really good in a single baseball game. A human manager can manage who's on today and who's off today and that kind of stuff, and situationally read better than AI. But if you look over the course of a season, 100 games or 10 years, AI wins every time. And so when they're talking about drafting prospects and stuff, AI does better than the scouts a lot of times, because prediction and probability is a lot different task than reading in the moment. And I think organizations are going to have that same challenge. And you need to be thinking about it like a sports team would, and putting those together. We still need the managers day to day, but we need some help in structuring this whole thing, because it's just too much data for a human brain to process.
Yeah. I mean, you do that across hundreds of people in different locations that are all working remotely, and then throw in AI agents and robots taking hats and doing things as well. It's an inordinately complex, way too complex, as you've said, for the human brain. So we just try and make that easy so leaders can win in their markets, and particularly lead and win through this change that we're seeing coming. That's got kind of existential risks for almost the whole market if you're not embracing it. So just want to be there.
Love that.
Be there to help.
I can't let you get out of here without answering my future-based projection. So this is fun. We're not going to hold you to it or anything, but and nobody knows. But if you had to take your best guess at where we end up, like say 30 years from now, there's going to be massive change in the next, 5 to 10. But 30 years, where do you think it shakes out? Is there zero unemployment, full unemployment? Which sci-fi movie do you think we would end up in? However you would take that prediction one. Damian, we'll start with you. Where do you think all of this ends up? Or where
I think it's not a movie, it's a book, The Culture by Ian M. Banks. And so that's the world where AI is the government, and AI runs things and produces things and manufactures things, and people are just everything that they want is there, and people have their time to themselves. So the world is dominated by playing games. That's where everything ends up. So The Culture by Ian Banks, I think, is a great optimistic future.
I'm gonna have to read that one. I shouted that out in my book, Playful Humans, here behind me, where I said, really, if you think about if Elon Musk can colonize Mars, you could colonize the Earth a lot easier, and you could provide everything that shelter, food that humans need to survive. Then what's our role? I think our role is to play and have fun and enjoy life. That's awesome. Tim, what's your take?
I don't know, to be honest. I think that I know you're wanting a single prediction of the future, and I definitely like Damian's view, which is playful, but I think it's probably going to be a rough ride. So I think a lot in the next 30 years, I think that to get to any different outcome from today is a huge amount of change. And so I think a lot about like, how do I prepare for that amount of change? How do I help and prepare and support people around me for that level of change? Because things won't look the same. And people do love kind of getting comfort and certainty in their work, and comfort and certainty in life and in their surroundings. And with all of those about to change very, very quickly, I think that's going to present some challenges and some huge opportunities. So it's just helping people around me to be ready for the opportunities and to be in a good spot to deal with the challenges.
Yeah, I like your answer too, because I think it's It's not simple. It's going to be messy. And some of the challenges we think are really easy to solve are not. That's the reason they haven't been solved. And some that we think are really hard will be really easy for AI and computers. And the chances that we solve all of them, I think, are very low. So I was just thinking about health as you were talking, where it's like, okay, maybe fixing a pacemaker. And I think they already have an artificial pumping heart and stuff. We could cure or not worry about heart disease, but other things like Alzheimer or brain problems, really complicated. We might not be able to fix that, or we can fix cancer. But if you lop off an arm in a car accident or something, growing it back would be a significantly harder challenge. And I think we're going to live in the future in some sort of weird way where we're going to have abundance and a ton of things we couldn't imagine, but we're also going to have some things that are very valuable and scarce, or tough challenges that we're going to find a shame that we can't solve, or aware of how hard they are. So that's going to be a fascinating thing to see, I think, as we go forward.
It is.
Fun.
Thank you. Yeah. Mike, you've asked us a lot of questions today. What are you seeing? I know you're focused more on the marketing side of things. What are the things that are just fascinated, blowing your mind around marketing and AI at the moment? What is the biggest game-changing things you're seeing in the application for marketing, sales, and product?
Great question. I am seeing a lot of what Damian was seeing, which is you can accomplish so much so fast that you can do 10 times as much as you could a year or two ago. That really is a fundamental shift in the way we market. If I had to make a prediction, scaling what we were doing isn't going to work. If you think about like cold calling is a simple example, because nobody really does it. Humans don't like doing it. It's actually fairly simple for AI to dial a phone number, read a script, and have a conversation these days. But take that to scale. If we can then spin up where we could have millions of cold calling robots, nobody would answer the phone anymore. It wouldn't work. So that marketing tactic, while it can be outsourced to AI, should not be, because it doesn't scale with AI. It becomes ineffective. And there's been so many sales and marketing tactics over the years that just, in a microcosm, it worked, right? But when you put it at scale, it doesn't. I wrote, my first book was LinkedIn, The Sandler Way. It was published by LinkedIn themselves, because what I saw was the influencer strategy works, but it doesn't work at scale if you have 5,000 salespeople on the Uber sales team, or at the time it was Angie's List and stuff like that. We'll go, well, you can't have 5,000 Angie's List influencers on LinkedIn. It doesn't scale. So I had to rethink what tactics would work for a team of 5,000 people.
I think that's such a good point. And I know the human first AI marketing is kind of where your headline sits at, but maybe my last thought, conscious of time, is that when you do get video, voice, like what's going to become really unique and what's going to become rare is verified human interactions. And a lot of that's, I think, going to go back to in person, where you actually like really value that, like, oh, I got to meet that person. I got, like, it's a real thing. I know
that's where I was going to go.
Not AI, not video, not, because we could right now produce this podcast. This may not be any of us. It may just be chatter that has been synthesized with, Damian's perfect. I'm suspicious of Damian right now, to be honest, because this blow wave is just too damn perfect. But I do think it's going to go back to be some genre of human interaction will be what's most valuable.
I agree. I think that
exclusive club,
it gets to this point where it kind of collapses back in on itself. Like I said with those micro businesses earlier, I think the future is, who do I know and trust? Because there's so much AI fake stuff out there. It's overwhelming. It's too much information. So we went from information, being scarce to information being abundant. And now it's unreliable and overabundant to where we can't even process anymore. So my last thought here is, Damian, as you mentioned, you can program so much in a day. I find myself when I'm cranking out marketing materials, at some point I have to stop and step away from the computer because I'm like, I just created a week's or a month's worth of marketing content in a day. My brain like can't even function. It feels like a weird, like manic state almost, where you're like, I'm making it faster than I can read it, let alone clients or anybody else. Like that's insane that you can make more content than you can consume yourself. That's a mind-boggling situation we're all gonna find ourselves.
And the idea that it's throwaway, that you could do 100 times what you need and then just choose the best 1%. That's what I think is the attitude that's going to take over, is that what seemed like work in the past is just going to seem easy, and like creating things is going to seem easy. So people will feel like, I feel less attachment to code now. I feel quite happy to delete what would have been days worth of work and then just regenerate.
Nope, didn't work.
Yeah,
Delete,
exactly.
delete
And so the end
quicker.
result means that I can cherry pick the best bits, and I think it's really inspiring to be able to. It's a luxury, really. Like it's a luxury of being able to, rather than settle for second best, you can really keep going until you find something that you're really excited about.
I hadn't thought of it that way, and I found myself doing the same thing, where it's like I made a whole thing and I was like, no, it stinks, I'm gonna start over. So really cool. All right, final question here. Functionally.com is the website, the Org Design podcast. Definitely want to make sure you check that out, and I'll be making a guest appearance on there soon here with Tim and the gang. Anything else you'd like to add about how you can help us or how we can help you?
No, enjoy Boston. Great place. And if I'm ever up that way, we'll go and have some lobster rolls.
Sounds good. I appreciate it. And for Avenue 9, we talked about it a little bit today, but if you want help with your marketing strategy, figuring this out in the crazy world, happy to consult, as well as generative AI is what I specialize in, and making cool stuff, having cool conversations like this with your founder, your top salesperson, your best clients, and turning that into that human created content that is actually meaningful and has a unique voice, rather than just copying what everybody else is doing. So reach out to me at avenue9.com. Until next time, keep going. Have fun, everybody.